15 of the Blackhawks' 82 games this season will be broadcasted on national television. I'll go through each of them, and we'll also react to the top 10 Blackhawks rated in NHL 26.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Blackhawks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can go and give me a follow on X at Jack Bushman2, but make sure to check out my strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey so you don't miss any of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And I got one final request for you all here real quick. Go and show some love to Locked On Blackhawks on Instagram. I've gotten the page up and running again here recently, going into the start of this season, and I've been posting some cool Blackhawks content, stories, and reels and whatnot, so please make sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks on Instagram if you haven't done so already. I greatly appreciate all of your support, but happy Tuesday, everyone. Happy start of September, which cannot believe is already here, cannot believe we've already kind of reached the end of the summer, and while I know that can be a tough pill to swallow for a lot of us, on the bright side, September, the arrival of September, brings a lot of great things. Of course, we got NFL football in just a couple of days' time. The defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles taking on the division rival Dallas Cowboys. We got another great divisional matchup on Friday in Sao Paulo, Brazil, between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Los Angeles Chargers, no longer San Diego. And then we got the Chicago Bears Week 1 taking on the Minnesota Vikings at Soldier Field, Monday Night Football. Lots of good stuff coming up this week. But also, with the arrival of the month of September, that means Blackhawks hockey is coming up as well. We're going to be getting Blackhawks preseason action towards the end of this month. We also got the Tom Curvers Prospect Showcase starting up next week, and then training camp kicking off the week after. So lots of good stuff coming up on the schedule that should be giving us Blackhawks fans reasons to be excited. But to open up today's show, Blackhawks fans, EA Sports recently released every team's player ratings for NHL 26, which is set to release in less than 2 weeks' time on September 12th for PS5 and the Xbox Series. I'm now not someone who's been too plugged in to the NHL series over probably the last decade now. But man, NHL used to be my absolute jam in middle school and high school. There was nothing I loved more than playing into the late nights with one of my good buddies who I created an online franchise with, trying to win a championship, or even just going head to head with my friends whenever we'd get together and watch Blackhawks games, play a quick game of Chell during the intermission. Truly one of my favorite video games of all time. However, from what I've heard, since I haven't been a consistent player of the video game over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years or whatnot, is it hasn't really been all that great. There haven't been a ton of changes. Doesn't sound like a majority of people are really happy with the way the game has kind of transpired during that time stretch, but hopefully that isn't what winds up being the case here with NHL 26. I know to the people who pre-ordered the deluxe edition, they'll actually be playing NHL 26 in just a couple of days here on September 5th. But the real reason why I wanted to bring this up here on the show is not only to see how, EA Sports rated each member of the Blackhawks and to kind of see what overalls they received, but some of you may remember recently on the show, with the Locked On NHL Network, creating a top 100 NHL players list. All of us NHL hosts were asked to rank from 1 to 5 the top current members of the team. And I shared my top 5 with you all not all that long ago. So I was just interested to see how my top 5, I actually gave out a top 6, but how that ranking kind of compared to how EA Sports sees things for the Blackhawks on their roster this year. But before I get into the Blackhawks stuff, I did first want to bring up the top 10 players overall in NHL 26. No surprise at number 1, it's Connor McDavid. What did surprise me, though, is that he's only a 97 overall. And I know historically in video games, 99s, you don't see them too often, right? But out of the MLB, NFL, NBA, and NHL, I think maybe only Shohei Ohtani. No one deserves a 99 more than Connor McDavid, in my opinion. The only one who's really in comparison, I believe, would be Shohei Ohtani. I would have liked to see Connor McDavid be a 99 overall. I think he is worthy of that number, but again, I know those are kind of hard historically to come by in these video games. But McDavid kicks things off with a 97 overall. There are 3 players behind him who all received a 96. Those 3 are Nathan MacKinnon, Leon Draisaitl, and Nikita Kucherov. No real arguments from me there. I do think they all probably deserve to be one tier behind Connor McDavid, but of course are among the best players in the NHL. So definitely deserve to be in that group. Then there are 3 players with a 95 overall. Those are Cale Makar, Quinn Hughes, and Alexander Barkov. To me, I probably would have given Cale Makar a 96 overall. I do think he deserves to be a little bit ahead of Quinn Hughes. I would have those two, as I'll get into during segment 3 of today's episode. I do have those 2 defensemen as the clear-cut top 2 blue liners in the NHL, but I do feel like Cale, should have the edge over Quinn. So I'd probably have Cale as a 96, while Hughes and Barkov would remain as a 95. And then we see 6 players close things out here with a 94 overall. Sidney Crosby, even though he's getting up there in age, the consistency never seems to dip. He's still a 94. So is David Pastrnak, Connor Hellebuyck, Jack Eichel, Austin Matthews, and Kirill Kaprizov. I know Matthews is coming off of a little bit of a down season for his standards, right? Considering the amount of goals he potted in 23-24. I'd probably still have him as a 95 overall with Quinn Hughes and Alexander Barkov. That would probably be the one difference to me based on these top 10 or top 13 players in NHL 26. But as far as the Blackhawks go, how EA Sports rated each and every one of them, kicking things off at number 1, unsurprisingly, is Connor Bedard. He was also who I had at number 1 of my list that I revealed a couple of weeks ago. EA Sports gave Connor Bedard an 88 overall, and some other 88s in the game are Adrian Kempe, Nikolai Ehlers, Alex DeBrincat, Evgeny Malkin, Anze Kopitar, and then 3 other youngsters, which I think is very interesting, in Cole Caulfield, Lane Hudson, and Macklin Celebrini. And man, I do believe Bedard and Celebrini, and even Lane Hudson, I think those 3 should probably have the same overall, even though Celebrini, in terms of his overall impact on the game, probably had the better rookie year than Connor Bedard did. I still think they're neck and neck in terms of their development, and it's going to be so fun to watch those 2 these next handful of years with some of the deepest prospect pools in the entire Western Conference. They've obviously been training with one another these last couple of weeks during the summer. I do think Bedard and Celebrini deserve to have the same rating. I would probably give them an 87 overall, though, if I'm being honest. Cole Caulfield, to me, is the one of these 4 youngsters that probably should be ahead of the rest of the group. I mean, Caulfield potted 37 goals for Montreal this year, and I know his playmaking might not have the same upside as Connor Bedard's or Macklin Celebrini's, and he definitely doesn't have the full-on impact like a Macklin Celebrini can provide with his 200-foot game. But that goal scoring alone, I think, should probably either have Caulfield as an 89 or have him as an 88, while Bedard, Hudson, and Celebrini deserve to be 87s. But no surprise there that Bedard kicks things off for the Blackhawks. NHL 26 player ratings with an 88 overall. In terms of my top 5, how I had things from here behind Connor Bedard, as some of you may remember, I had Teuvo Teravainen at number 3, Alex Vlasic at number 4. I had Teuvo Teravainen at number 2, Alex Vlasic at number 3, Ryan Donato at number 4, and then I had Tyler Bertuzzi at number 5, but I made sure to mention, even though he's only played 56 NHL games, I had Frank Nazar right behind him at number 6, and I said I wouldn't be surprised if Nazar cements himself as a top 5 player of this team by, like the middle to end of November. Interestingly enough, after Bedard received an 88, numbers 2, 3, and 4 for the Blackhawks all received an 84 overall, and those 3 players are Teuvo Teravainen, Alex Vlasic, and Ryan Donato. And I thought this was so funny because I mentioned when going through my ratings, it's really tough to rank these next couple of guys after Connor Bedard. I gave Teravainen the edge because of his longevity and also how well he performed in the final stretch of the season once Anders Sorensen took over and the offense they just had so much more opportunities there. In the way that Teuvo can also impact the game on the defensive side of things. Even though he is undersized, even though he's not a physical or rugged player, still can play on the penalty kill and still is responsible more times than not on the defensive side of things. So that's why Teuvo had the edge for me at number 2. I gave Vlasic barely the edge over Ryan Donato, even though Donato's, of course, coming off of career highs all across the board, a 30-goal season, which was so big for the Blackhawks offense and to help Connor Bedard on the top line. I still just think Vlasic, at his age, being how consistent he's been in a top pairing role for the Blackhawks these last 2 years, I just feel like that's been a little bit more important than what Ryan Donato has done, even though both of them have served, huge roles for the Blackhawks, in particular during the 24-25 season for Donato. That was my reasoning why I gave Vlasic the edge. But as I said, I think all of these players are very similar, and in terms of overall and ranking them right here, right now, EA Sports obviously thought the same way. Then at number 5, Connor Murphy was next at 83 overall, along with Spencer Knight, which I thought was a little bit interesting. But just behind them, tied for 7th at 82 overall, was Tyler Bertuzzi, who I had at number 5. Frank Nazar, who I had right behind him at number 6, is also an 82 overall. And so is Jason Dickinson and Nick Foligno, which is curious to me. I could understand, given Nazar still being a little very early in his career, right? And not a proven commodity at this point in time, even though I think he will be very soon. I could understand him having the same overall as Dickinson and Foligno. I cannot understand Tyler Bertuzzi having the same overall. I don't think it's going to be much higher by any means, but I do think, he scored 20 goals for the Blackhawks last year and wasn't ever really utilized in the top line spot that I thought he was going to be. Didn't see a lot of time along with Connor Bedard at even strength. And while it wasn't, a great start to his Blackhawks tenure, I don't think it was an absolute disaster either. So I would probably have Bertuzzi as an 83 overall, tied along with Connor Murphy. I understand him receiving an 83. Spencer Knight is probably 1 or 2 overalls a little bit too high, in my opinion. And it's just because I think as a backup for the Florida Panthers, with the 2-time defending Stanley Cup champions in front of him and, the best or one of the best teams in hockey over the last half decade, it's hard to truly understand how high level of a goaltender he is because he was in such a solid situation. That's obviously not going to be the case any longer here in Chicago. So this year is going to tell us a lot more about Spencer Knight and truly what overall he should probably deserve in NHL. I would probably give him an 81 or an 82 overall, but I do think he deserves to be in this group undoubtedly. I would just probably have Tyler Bertuzzi and Connor Murphy there at 83 overall, tied for 5th on the Blackhawks. But just thought it was funny that EA Sports, I guess not funny, it makes sense that EA Sports kind of rates out the Blackhawks as I do right here, right now. That takes care of my reaction to EA Sports top 10 Blackhawks player ratings in NHL 26, which again is set to be released here in less than 2 weeks on September 12th. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans. Next, I'll break down the Blackhawks national broadcast schedule and I'll also go through the Rockford Ice Hogs' first 2 preseason games. But first, I do got to show some love to one of today's sponsors, which is FanDuel. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And what I personally love about FanDuel is that it's super quick, easy, and the best way to add a little bit more energy to your Sundays. With player props, same-game parlays, and more ways than ever to now get in on the action. So are you ready to play? Go and download the FanDuel app now, or you can also visit FanDuel.com today to go and get started. Again, that's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet and win $300 in bonus bets when it wins. Real quick, before I get into segment 2, I have an important request for all of you. Locked On wants to hear more from you. We've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcasts even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started, and everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey, and you can also easily find the link in the show notes of today's episode. Thank you very much for helping us all out. Segment 2 on today's show, though, not only do we know the Blackhawks' full schedule for both the preseason and the regular season, which is now just over 1 month away. October 7th is the season opener against the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers, but now we also got the Blackhawks' entire national broadcast schedule, which, considering the CHSN fiasco, is somewhat significant, even though CHSN did finally reach an agreement with Comcast earlier this summer. I believe that happened in early June. Still, just given, Comcast not being, cable not being as prominent in households as it was 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago, right? And with YouTube TV, Fubo, I think Hulu still does live sports. With all of these streaming services being, the main way that people are enjoying entertainment on their television these days, does lead you to wonder how, even though the deal has been reached between the two sides, how this is still going to impact the Blackhawks moving forward. And obviously, the results from the decrease in regular watchers last year, down 78%, was the Blackhawks from the 23-24 season to 24-25. Obviously, things have not been trending in the right direction, but on the bright side, there are 15 of the 82 games for the Blackhawks this season that are going to be televised nationally, either through ESPN, TNT, or ESPN Plus. And while national broadcasts, I do like TNT's calls. ESPN and ESPN Plus, is, as they've been for so long, have just been an absolute disaster. It doesn't, make things better on the ears for all of us Blackhawks fans more times than not. At least there are, opportunities for people who don't have cable through Comcast to get an opportunity to watch the Blackhawks. But make no mistake about it, what's going on with the Hawks, what's going on just in general with these sports. In Chicago, you got Marquee, you got the bundle together here for the Blackhawks, Bulls, and White Sox, which is just an absolute disaster. It's tough to see kind of the way that things have been trending, but we'll see if there's any more deals between CHSN and regional sports providers. Doesn't seem like it's going to be the case for YouTube TV, which a lot of people have nowadays. We'll see what winds up transpiring, but did want to go through every nationally televised Blackhawks game for the 24-25 season here, which begins right off the jump with that season opener against the Florida Panthers. As I mentioned, that comes on October 7th. And I know this is part of an opening night triple header that the NHL is going to be doing on ESPN, but right from the get-go, this just seems like a mess for the Blackhawks. First off, this game is going to be on ESPN, which, if you've been watching hockey games on ESPN those last couple of years, you probably don't have high hopes for the broadcast and the quality of it. Not only is that, a little tough, but also, not only is this yet another banner-raising ceremony that the Blackhawks are going up against to open up the season. Believe that was the case for the Tampa Bay Lightning not too long ago. Believe that was the case for the Colorado Avalanche. This has been regularly scheduled programming for us Blackhawks fans to open up regular seasons. Not only does that suck, not only does an ESPN broadcast typically suck, but this game is scheduled for 4 p.m. Central Time on Tuesday. Who does that make sense for? And I know because it's a banner-raising ceremony, it's probably not going to start till closer to like 5 p.m. CT, because you got to go through player introductions, they got to raise the banner. There's a lot that goes into it, but I don't know who this benefits. Like, even if you're someone in Florida on East Coast time, most people are going to be working during the middle of the day on Tuesday, right? Like, I don't know. This just seems like a really poor scheduling for this. I don't think I've ever seen a Blackhawks game not on the weekend, scheduled for 4 p.m. Central Time. Very curious decision to open up the regular season that way. I get they want to jam 3 games in at one time, but this really does not make sense for the Chicago market whatsoever. Most people are going to be on their way home from work in traffic when this game is kicking off. It doesn't even really make a whole heck of a lot of sense, in my opinion, for Panthers fans down in Florida who are actually going to be in attendance for this one. Then just over 1 week later, the Blackhawks' second nationally televised game comes on TNT this time on October 15th, Wednesday, against the division rival St. Louis Blues in St. Louis. This game is going to start at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. It feels like 95% of games for the Blackhawks that have been televised on TNT the last couple of years get 8:30 p.m. CT puck drops. And I've been to a couple of these at the UC. One of them started after 9 o'clock during the middle of the week. This is just as bad as 4 p.m. CT on Tuesday, 8:30 p.m. CT on Wednesday, and the potential to start at 9 because this is going to be coming after a game. You know, there's going to be a game going on before this on TNT. Those tend to run longer than the regularly scheduled broadcast time, which causes this Blackhawks game to be delayed even further. Like, with people having to go to work the next day, with kids having to go to school, this doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense. I like having the Blackhawks versus Blues being nationally broadcasted, but at 8:30 p.m. CT on a Wednesday doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense. Then, just over a week again as well, the Blackhawks will be playing their third nationally broadcasted game of the opening month on Thursday, October 23rd, in Tampa Bay against the Lightning. This will be their first ESPN Plus game, and this one is starting at 5:45 p.m. CT. I understand, you know, with Tampa Bay being in East Coast time, obviously, usually these games start at 6 o'clock. I can get that. But 5:45 CT, this one doesn't like frustrate me. It's just weird. I don't think I've ever seen a Blackhawks game start or be scheduled for the 45th minute of the hour. Just thought that was very curious, but this one's going to be on ESPN Plus, so probably not going to be a very good broadcast if I had to guess right here, right now. Then the fourth Blackhawks nationally broadcasted game this year will come on November 12th against the New Jersey Devils. Second game on TNT, and you know what that means. It's going to be starting at 8:30 p.m. CT once again, and it's once again on a Wednesday. Just doesn't make any sense whatsoever here. Then November 26th against the Minnesota Wild, nationally broadcasted game on ESPN Plus. This one, fortunately, will be starting regular time at the UC, 7:30 p.m. Central Time for a Wednesday night. That gets a thumbs up there. But as I talked about with Seth Topal, host of Locked On Wild, when we got together on the show not too long ago, I know there hasn't been a lot of spark to the Blackhawks Wild rivalry because we've been so bad in recent years. But I still feel like it's a miss to put two division foes up against each other on ESPN Plus. That just doesn't create any buzz whatsoever. And this is a game that comes the night before Thanksgiving. Like, have the Blackhawks play the Devils or the Islanders or something on that night. Not a meaningful game against one of your division opponents. Not a lot of people are going to be tuning into the Chicago Blackhawks, let me tell you, on Black Wednesday, the night before Thanksgiving. Next Blackhawks nationally broadcasted game comes on December 2nd in Vegas, kicking off a West Coast road trip for the Blackhawks. ESPN Plus for back-to-back games here for the Blackhawks. Tuesday, December 2nd against the Vegas Golden Knights with a 9 p.m. Central Time puck drop. Not much we could do about that, though, with it being on the West Coast, but tough swing here for the Hawks. Back-to-back games on ESPN Plus, back-to-back games starting at 9 p.m. Central Time. 2 nights later, the Blackhawks will take on the Los Angeles Kings, also on ESPN Plus. 6 days after that, they'll return to the United Center. This game will be on TNT against the New York Rangers, and bless up, in an Original Six matchup, which is also going to have a giveaway at the UC. They're not starting this one at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. This game is starting at 6:30 p.m. Central Time at the UC on a Wednesday night. See, that wasn't so hard. This actually makes sense. It seems like it could be a real winner for the fans in attendance with an Original Six matchup, a giveaway, a regularly normal starting time. Seems like a good one to be in attendance for at the United Center. 2 nights later, again, the Blackhawks have a nationally broadcasted game in St. Louis, December 12th, which is a Friday, 7 p.m. Central Time puck drop. That's the good news. The bad news is it'll be on ESPN Plus, which again, a game between, I know putting this on ESPN Plus gives the opportunity for other fan bases to go and tune in. I don't really know if that's the case, though, with a lowly Blackhawks team, as we're probably going to be again this year, taking part in this contest. And I just think if you're going to put two division rivals up against each other on a national broadcast, it should be with a good broadcast team like TNT. You're just not going to get that on ESPN Plus, as we've learned. Then, December 23rd against the Philadelphia Flyers, the night before Christmas Eve. It's a TNT broadcast for the Blackhawks. Tuesday night at the UC. It's not 8:30 p.m. CT, but it's 8 o'clock CT. Think, I know most people, a lot of people will not have to work or go to school the next day, but just start that one at 7 o'clock or 7:30 p.m. CT, which just makes so much more sense. Then the first national broadcast of 2026 comes against the St. Louis Blues, January 7th, which is a Wednesday night on TNT. You know what that means. 8:30 p.m. CT puck drop. January 22nd against the Carolina Hurricanes. Back-to-back games here for the Blackhawks, actually, that are nationally broadcasted. Thursday, January 22nd against Carolina. 6 p.m. Central Time puck drop will be on ESPN Plus. That's a building the Blackhawks haven't been good in for quite some time. A broadcast that likely won't be very good. Sounds like a real loser of a game. And then the next night in Tampa Bay, Blackhawks will be taking on the Lightning on ESPN, not ESPN Plus. Friday night game, 6 p.m. Central Time. Sounds like it could be a good one to enjoy a couple of beverages with your buddies for, even though the Blackhawks have not been very good in Tampa for quite some time either. And then the last two nationally broadcasted games of the year for the Blackhawks are a home-and-home series against the Minnesota Wild in March. The first one is March 17th, Tuesday, against the Minnesota Wild. Game will be on TNT, and it's a 6:30 p.m. CT broadcast. Yes, this makes sense. Two division opponents at a game that is regularly scheduled in the Central Time Zone, going up against one another with a solid broadcast. This is probably the best nationally scheduled game the Blackhawks have all season long, but after they take one step forward, of course, they take one step backwards, because the back end of this home-and-home series, 2 nights later, March 19th in Minnesota, that game's going to be on ESPN+. Great. At least it's starting at 6 p.m. Central Time that Thursday night in Minnesota, but 15 nationally broadcasted games for the Blackhawks here this season. I believe 7 are on ESPN Plus. The other 8 are going to be on TNT or ESPN. It's probably a couple too many, if we're being honest here, considering the position the Blackhawks are in. But I do understand why the NHL does this, because even though the Blackhawks are horrible, people still care about this franchise. Original 6. They're in their 100th year anniversary of the organization as well. Hopefully the Blackhawks can put up some better fights, though, in these national broadcasted games than they've done here in the last couple of years. And I am at least a little bit more encouraged of their chances in doing so, considering they're going to have some more young impact players on the roster here this year. Before going into segment 3, one thing I did want to bring up here real quick, along with the Blackhawks nationally broadcasted schedule for this year, what also got released recently was the Rockford Ice Hogs preseason schedule. The Ice Hogs will be playing a pair of preseason games before their regular season officially begins on October 11th against the Milwaukee Admirals, which is just 4 days after the Blackhawks open up their regular season in Florida against the Panthers. The first preseason game for the Ice Hogs will be against the Chicago Wolves as part of their school day game, which comes on Thursday, October 2nd at 10:30 a.m. Central Time, and then they will also play the following night in Milwaukee, taking on the Admirals Friday, October 3rd at 7 p.m. Central Time. So there are some updates on both the Blackhawks and the Rockford Ice Hogs schedule, as we're just about a month away from hockey season officially returning. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, before I wrap up today's episode, still want to dive into the NHL Network's top 20 defensemen list. Segment 3, continuing to go through the NHL Network's top 20 lists that they dropped in the month of August. Last week, I broke down their top 20 wings list. Today, I wanted to get into the top 20 defensemen list, which was dropped in the second week of August. And compared to the top 20 wings list, This one is real tough here in terms of ranking them 1 through 20. I don't think it's possible to come away with a list that makes every fan base happy. Someone is going to feel like they got snubbed. Someone is going to feel like someone's rated too high or too low. I don't think it's just hard to do a list in general that makes everyone happy out there. But this one in particular, I think could ruffle some feathers. So make sure to, take it with a grain of salt, because you got to split hairs with a lot of these guys when you're rating the best defenseman in the NHL from 1 to 20. But I also want to bring up which Blackhawks defenseman we could see in this top 20 list next. But as far as how the NHL Network broke it down, the best blue liners in the league right here, right now, as I teased in segment 1, Cale Makar kicks things off at number 1. He was also number 1 in this list this time last year. Number 2 is Quinn Hughes, who was also ranked number 2 last year. Number 3 is Zach Werenski, who was 14th on the top 20 defenseman list this time last year. Miro Heiskanen is at number 4. He was 5th last year. Victor Hedman comes in at number 5. He was number 3 the year prior. Then it's Josh Morrissey, who was previously at number 12. He's at number 6. Rasmus Dahlin comes in next at number 7, jumping up from number 11. Jacob Slavin is 8 after previously being ranked 13th. Roman Josi drops down to number 9 after being ranked 4th ahead of the 24-25 season. Evan Bouchard then comes in next at number 10. He was number 9 the year prior. Charlie McAvoy is at number 11 after being number 7 last year. Gustav Forsling is at number 12 after being ranked the 6th best defenseman following the 23-24 campaign. Jake Sanderson next at number 13. Thomas Harley at 14. Shea Theodore at 15. Adam Fox all the way down at number 16 after being top 10 last year, coming in at number 8. Devon Tays is down at number 17 after previously being ranked 10th. Then you got Mikhail Sergachev at 18, Lane Hudson at 19, and Minnesota Wild defenseman Brock Faber rounding things out at number 20, while the most noteworthy defensemen who did not crack this top 20 list were Mo Seider. He was number 20 last year. Mackenzie Weegar. Noah Dobson was number 15 the year prior. Aaron Ekblad, Matthias Ekholm was previously ranked 16th. Drew Doughty was previously ranked 17th. Noah Hannafin was previously ranked 18th. And Dougie Hamilton was previously ranked 19th. So a lot of shakeup on this list compared to the year prior, particularly from numbers 13 through 20. There's only 2 players in that list this year that were previously on the list. So a lot of shakeup on the back end. And again, I think this list could change a lot compared to who you're asking. But here is how I currently rank the top 20 defensemen in the NHL. I agree Cale Makar is the no-doubter number 1. And I believe Quinn Hughes is right behind him at number 2. After that, it gets really interesting. To me, if you've been a longtime viewer or listener of the show, then you know how highly I think of Miro Heiskanen. I have him next at number 3. Behind him at number 4, I have Victor Hedman, who a lot of people, when I saw reactions to this list, a lot of people said Victor Hedman is now overrated. And that could be the case. His last 3 Stanley Cup playoffs have not been as, impactful as his prior 3 were. But this is a guy who regularly still produces 50, 60 points a year at his age. And with the amount of mileage that he has on his tires, I think it's a little natural for him to slow down. But I still think backs against the wall with the amount of experience, with all he's done in this league, and even his down years are still, remarkable NHL seasons for most defensemen in this league. I think Victor Hedman, you could make an argument that he doesn't deserve to be in the top 5, and I could understand it. But to me, I'm still putting Victor Hedman in my top 5. Number 5 to me is probably the most interesting one of my top 10 here. I have Roman Josi at number 5. And I know he's coming off of a really poor year with Nashville. The entire team was disappointing last season. We're just a year removed from Roman Josi being ranked number 4 in this list. And he's a consistent double-digit goal scorer. He's been a consistent top player for that team. Minute muncher, a guy who put up almost 100 points as a defenseman a couple of years ago and has been right around a point per game for like the last decade now. I think we've now gotten to the point where, yes, I know Roman Josi is coming off of a down year, but it feels like on this list, and I understand why. Recency bias just takes the forefront so much, and hence Zach Werenski coming in at number 3. In my opinion, Zach Werenski is he's not a top 5 defenseman in the NHL. He's probably fringe top 10 in my opinion. He had 23 goals last year. He had a career year. But prior to that, Zach Werenski, like I mentioned, was the 14th best defenseman in the NHL. I think that's probably a more accurate assessment of his true value, but he's obviously coming off of such a fantastic season. It's hard to ignore that kind of stuff. But Roman Josi, this time last year, there was an argument for him to be the 3rd best defenseman in the league, right behind Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes. And I don't think we're all that far removed from it. So that's why I have Roman Josi at number 5. I am showing Zach Werenski the respect, though, from scoring 23 goals as a defenseman last year and having an outstanding season. I am putting him at number 6, but I definitely see a world where he could be outside of the top 10 by this time next year. Adam Fox, to me, at number 7. Seeing him at 16 is insane. This is a kid who's still only 26 years old, has had 3 70-point careers. I know it was a down season for his standards and for the New York Rangers as a team, but to not have Adam Fox in the top 10 is absolutely ludicrous, in my opinion. I have Rasmus Dahlin up next at number 8. And you could make a case that Rasmus Dahlin is already a top 5 defenseman in the NHL, and I would understand it with his skating, his size, nearly a point per game on a bad Buffalo Sabres team this past season. Like, there's definitely the possibility that 1 year from now, Rasmus Dahlin is number 3 or number 4 on this list. I just don't think he has enough of a body of work to jump someone like Adam Fox and Roman Josi, who have been doing it for a little bit longer. And we also haven't seen Rasmus Dahlin in the Stanley Cup playoffs yet in his career. So that's why I have him at number 8. Number 9, Josh Morrissey, even though he does have the greater body of work than someone like Rasmus Dahlin and the offensive production that he's put together. I mean, he was a defensive defenseman for the first 6-7 years of his career and has really taken it to a different level offensively. Still hasn't really done it in the Stanley Cup playoffs when it matters the most. And it has been a little bit of a smaller sample size of him being at this level of a defenseman. But to me, Josh Morrissey is undoubtedly a top 10 defenseman in the NHL. I have him at number 9. Number 10 for me, I have Jacob Slavin, who won't put up the offensive numbers that the rest of these guys do, but truly might be the best shutdown defensive defenseman in the entire NHL. That, I think, deserves to give him a top 10 spot. Right behind Slavin at number 11, I have Charlie McAvoy. Him and the Bruins, just a little bit of a down year, all things considered, but McAvoy still absolutely one of the best in the business at a young age. Gustav Forsling, I do have coming in next at number 12. Number 6, I know Forsling, like, 2-time Stanley Cup champion. He wasn't ranked number 6 this year, by the way, but I know what he's done in the Stanley Cup playoffs and how great he's been against Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers to help win 2 Stanley Cups in a row. But I still don't think you can have Gustav Forsling in the top 10, in my opinion. Him and Charlie McAvoy, that's kind of splitting hairs, in my opinion. I just went with Forsling at number 12. At number 13, I have Evan Bouchard, who offensively, you cannot deny his impact and his productivity, especially being a point-per-game guy in the Stanley Cup playoffs. That's huge, but he's probably the worst defender of this entire list so far. So that's why I have him outside my top 10 at number 13. Number 14, I have Devon Toews. I think 17 is too low for a guy who plays such a key role for the Colorado Avalanche and allows Cale Makar to be Cale Makar and play to his instincts. I still think Devon Toews is top 15 in the league. Number 15, I have Thomas Harley, great young defenseman who really showcased his stuff in the Stanley Cup playoffs here for the Dallas Stars, kind of took it to another level. Jake Sanderson, I have right behind Thomas Harley just because he doesn't have as great of a body of work yet and hasn't done it in the Stanley Cup playoffs like we just saw from Thomas Harley. Right behind both of those two at number 17, I have Mo Seider, who wasn't included in the NHL Network's top 20 list, but I think that's a little bit hooey to me. At number 18, I have Lane Hutson, who you could probably put him ahead of Mo Seider, and I wouldn't argue with it. The rookie season that he had was truly sensational. 66 points, 60 assists, incredible playmaking and skating abilities. But again, it's only been one season, and as an undersized blue liner, before we really put Lane Hutson higher up in these rankings, I think we got to see a bigger body of work and what he can do when it matters the most in the Stanley Cup playoffs. At number 19, I have Noah Dobson, who's He's kind of been dying with the Islanders organization the last few years, but gets traded to the Montreal Canadiens, which him and frickin' Lane Hudson together is going to be must-see TV the way those two guys play the game. Should be a good pairing with one another, should they be defensive partners. And then rounding things out to me is Aaron Ekblad at number 20. I know the injuries have really derailed his consistency, but whenever he is healthy, like we just saw in the Stanley Cup playoffs, his impact cannot be denied. And you can even make a case that he makes more of an impact when he's fully right than Gustav Forsling does. But unfortunately, that just hasn't been the case for Aaron Ekblad for kind of the last half of his career now. But I do want to show respect to him for being a two-time Stanley Cup champion. That's why I give him the nod here. At number 20, over guys like Shea Theodore, Mikhail Sergachev, or Brock Faber, who are all a part of the NHL Network's top 20 list. They just didn't cut it for me here. As far as which Blackhawks defenseman could we see on this list next, I think it's a pretty obvious answer, or two potential candidates here. In Alex Vlasic or Sam Rinzel, Vlasic's probably the more likely of the two to arrive on it sooner, just because I do feel like with time, he's just going to start getting more and more respect as one of the best young shutdown defensemen in the NHL, but he doesn't have a ton of offensive upside. And most of these guys on this list have that offensive upside. And it's also hard to recognize the value of a defensive defenseman on a bad hockey team. So that's why I also think there is a possibility that Sam Rinzel could be the next Blackhawks defenseman in this top 20 list. I just think the world of Sam Rinzel. And I think his ceiling is so high because of his size and skating ability. It probably won't happen, overnight next season for Rinzel, but he has such a high ceiling and there's so much runway for him. And he looks so comfortable at this level at the end of last year. It has me so stoked about what caliber of a defenseman he could be. I definitely think he has top pairing upside in his future. And with a partner like Alex Vlasic, I'm not comparing Sam Rinzel to Cale Makar, but that pairing feels like it could be very similar to what the Colorado Avalanche have with Devon Toews, a sturdy, stable defensive defenseman. He's a better offensive defenseman than Alex Vlasic is, but I'm just kind of giving you a comp in terms of structure for the Blackhawks blue line. I think it's one of those two guys, though, Alex Vlasic or Sam Rinzel. Will be very interesting with all the talented Blackhawks blue liners to see who it winds up being next as part of this NHL Network top 20 list in the near future. But that's going to take care of today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, everyone. Again, thank you all for making the show your very first listen here to start off your day. For your second listen, make sure to go and check out the Locked On NHL podcast, where there is no offseason, bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter the most with the local coverage you love from Locked On. And you can easily go and check out Locked On NHL right now on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcasts.